Long before the Grand Canyon was designated a national park, and decades before modern archaeologists mapped its sheer vertical cliffs, the Hopi people preserved a history that mainstream science refused to acknowledge. For countless generations, elders of the Bear Clan spoke of a vast, engineered world existing deep beneath the canyon floor. This was not described as a symbolic spiritual realm or a mythical underworld. It was detailed as a physical network of massive underground chambers, long interconnecting stone tunnels, and high-ceilinged vaults where their earliest ancestors sought shelter during cataclysmic planetary shifts. According to these oral records, the ancestors did not inhabit this subterranean domain alone. They lived alongside a mysterious, highly intelligent civilization known as the Ant People, beings described as tall, elongated, and deeply knowledgeable about subterranean survival. These tradition bearers maintained that humanity eventually emerged back onto the Earth's surface through a specific physical opening in the canyon known as the Sipapu. For centuries, Western historians dismissed the Hopi emergence accounts as primitive folklore, assuming that no such complex subterranean structures could possibly exist within the solid limestone strata of northern Arizona. Then, on the morning of April 5, 1909, a front-page article published by the Arizona Gazette sent shockwaves through the American scientific community. The headline announced what purported to be the most extraordinary archaeological breakthrough in North American history. According to the report, an explorer and researcher named G.E. Kincaid, traveling by boat down the turbulent waters of the Colorado River under the auspices of the Smithsonian Institution, spotted an artificial opening carved high into the sheer, near vertical face of the Redwall limestone. The entrance sat nearly 2,000 feet above the riverbed, situated on a cliff so steep that reaching it without specialized climbing gear was virtually impossible. Kincaid reported that upon scaling the wall and stepping inside, he found himself standing not in a natural geological cavern, but at the threshold of a vast, precision-engineered subterranean citadel carved directly out of solid rock. As Kincaid and an accompanying archaeologist identified as Professor S.A. Jordan penetrated deeper into the darkness, the true scope of the site began to emerge. A colossal central passage, measuring nearly 8 feet wide and extending over 1,000 feet into the mountain, served as the main artery for dozens of branching corridors. Off these primary avenues were hundreds of individual rooms, ranging from small storage vaults to massive vaulted halls. Inside these chambers, the explorers documented extraordinary preservation. Sealed stone rooms contained vast quantities of ancient grains, copper tools crafted with astonishing precision, deadly weapons forged from unknown metal alloys, and delicate ceramic vessels completely alien to any known southwestern Native American culture. Even more baffling were the artistic motifs, carved statues and stone figures holding lotus flowers, possessing features strikingly reminiscent of ancient Egyptian and Asian iconographies. The report reached an eerie climax when Kincaid detailed the discovery of deep burial crypts. Arranged in long, orderly rows along the walls of giant halls were dozens of preserved mummies, each seated upright, carefully bound in woven wrappings, and accompanied by grave goods made of copper and polished stone. Etched into the hard limestone walls above these burial niches were thousands of strange geometric symbols and hieroglyphic inscriptions that neither Kincaid nor Jordan could decipher. 4 days later, on April 9, 1909, the Arizona Gazette published a follow-up feature, expanding on the dimensions of the complex and stating that the Smithsonian was mobilizing a full-scale archaeological team to clear, document, and preserve what appeared to be an underground city capable of housing upwards of 50,000 people. And then, suddenly, the narrative went cold. Follow-up reports ceased entirely. No official excavation papers were presented at academic symposiums. No photographs of the mummies, the copper weapons, or the hieroglyphic walls were published. No artifacts were placed on public display in Washington, D.C. When independent researchers later petitioned the Smithsonian Institution for access to the Kincaid expedition field notes, the response was swift and absolute. The Smithsonian declared that it possessed no institutional record of a G.E. Kincaid, no record of a Professor S.A. Jordan, and no record of any such discovery ever taking place in the Grand Canyon. For the majority of mainstream historians, this official denial closed the case. The 1909 Arizona Gazette story was promptly labeled a classic Wild West newspaper hoax, a sensationalized piece of yellow journalism designed to boost paper sales in a frontier territory eager for national prominence. Yet, dismissing the entire affair as a simple fabrication ignores the complex legal, historical, and geological realities of the early 20th century. Just 3 years prior to the publication of the article, President Theodore Roosevelt signed the Antiquities Act of 1906 into federal law. This monumental legislation granted the United States federal government direct authority over all major historical and archaeological sites discovered on public lands, making unapproved excavation or removal of artifacts a federal offense. The Grand Canyon was already under strict federal jurisdiction as a national monument. If an uncatalogued, non-indigenous subterranean city containing tons of copper tools, preserved mummies, and gold-encrusted artifacts had actually been breached, it would have immediately fallen under total federal containment. During this era, the Smithsonian served as the primary government repository for all major domestic archaeological discoveries, working hand-in-hand with federal land managers to control access to sensitive sites. Furthermore, the physical landscape of the Grand Canyon itself presents an undeniable geological truth that aligns precisely with both the 1909 report and the Hopi oral histories. The canyon is not merely a dry, open gorge, it is one of the most cave-dense regions on the North American continent. The massive Redwall limestone layer, formed over 300 million years ago, is honeycombed with vast, ancient karst cave systems created by subterranean water flow. Thousands of these natural caverns sit suspended hundreds of feet above the canyon floor on vertical cliff faces that remain entirely inaccessible by foot. To this day, less than 10% of the Grand Canyon's cave systems have been fully surveyed or documented by speleologists. Vast swaths of the park remain strictly off-limits to the public, designated as protected wilderness zones, sacred tribal grounds, or hazardous terrain requiring restricted federal permits to enter. When you place the physical geography of these uncharted limestone caverns alongside the centuries-old Hopi accounts, the parallels become impossible to ignore. Long before G.E. Kincaid ever stepped foot on a boat along the Colorado River, the Bear Clan of the Hopi had been meticulously maintaining the exact same spatial details through their sacred oral transmission. They spoke of vast, multi-chambered subterranean cities carved deep within the limestone walls of the canyon. They described an advanced, non-surface civilization that possessed deep technical knowledge, mastered underground storage, and constructed complex tunnel networks that protected human refugees during periods of extreme surface catastrophe. The Hopi did not treat these accounts as symbolic allegories or spiritual myths. They treated them as literal, physical geography pointing directly to the Grand Canyon region as the cradle of human emergence. In the year 2000, the Hopi Cultural Preservation Office issued a formal public statement regarding sacred locations within the Grand Canyon. Rather than seeking to validate or disprove the sensationalist claims of the 1909 newspaper article, the tribal government emphasized a far more profound point. Specific subterranean sites and cave systems within the canyon are deeply sacred, actively protected, and strictly inappropriate for public intrusion or commercial exploitation. The statement reinforced a reality that indigenous elders had understood for generations. The deepest sanctuaries of the canyon were never meant to be analyzed by sensationalist headlines or looted by amateur treasure hunters. More than a century after G.E. Kincaid's claimed discovery, the ultimate truth of the Grand Canyon remains suspended between two extraordinary possibilities. Either the Arizona Gazette printed one of the most meticulously detailed, geologically sophisticated hoaxes in American print history, accidentally matching the exact subterranean details preserved by Hopi elders for centuries, or a government-backed expedition stumbled upon a massive, forgotten underground complex that challenged the accepted timeline of human history, prompting a total institutional lockdown under the newly enacted laws of federal land control. As modern speleologists, satellite LiDAR operators, and high-resolution ground-penetrating radar systems continue to scan the vast, unmapped vertical cliffs of northern Arizona, one fact remains completely indisputable. The Grand Canyon is far older, far deeper, and far more complex than modern history books admit. And deep within its silent, unexplored limestone vaults, the ancient world may still be keeping its greatest secrets perfectly intact.